Stay tuned. This episode is all about Jack and car chasing.
Denise Mazzola is a certified professional dog trainer with over 20 years experience training dogs and people. If you've got a doggy dilemma, Denise can help.
Welcome to another episode of Doggy Dilemmas. I'm Denise Mazzola, and as you can see, Jack is back with us for another episode. Jack is a young dog and he's developing, and as he develops, he's developing problems, but maybe more importantly, as he lives with the family more and more and settles in, that honeymoon period is going away, and now we've got some car chasing that's happening. Jack is a real hunter, squirrels, chipmunks, things like that. He is all over that. So cars to him are just another critter that needs to be chased down, but unfortunately it can be life-threatening to a dog that's chasing cars. Let's just take a quick look at some of his car chasing behavior, and you might get some now if he chases this truck. Yep, he watches the car and barks, and what happens is the dog, one, gets reinforced for barking at the car, and the car keeps going. So the car leaves, and if that's potentially what the dog wants, that's what he gets. Jack's also afraid of loud sounds, so part of it is a fear response, which is hard to see when he's lunging and barking at the cars. See, in the car, and the truck keeps going. So you can watch the dog. He looks at the car, he closes his mouth, stops breathing, then he takes off chasing the car. So as you can see, Jack is pretty serious about it. He looks, barks, growls, and lunges at the cars. It's fairly unpredictable in that sometimes he only chases cars that are next to us. Now he's going to look again. And other times, now he's chasing cars that are on the other side of the road. It also seems to be related to his level of frustration. If he hasn't been able to greet a dog or chase the squirrel, then he sort of redirects it to the car. But nonetheless, as you can see, it's a pretty serious issue with Jack. So what we're going to do today is show you some ways that you can work with trying to get rid of car chasing, but you need to replace it with another behavior, and your dog needs to know what you want them to do first before you can start telling them what you don't want them to do. So since Jack has been with me before, he does have a leave it command. We can use that. He has a nice hand touch, so in the presence of a car we can ask him to touch our hand. But the first thing that needs to happen before any of that can happen is Jack's emotional response to the cars has to change. Because what we're seeing here is an emotional response. And if I were to try to ask him to do a behavior, sit, down, touch, leave it, chances are I'm not going to get it because he's in the throes of car chasing and he's not really present with me. He's not being an operant dog. So the way we're going to change that emotional response is through classical conditioning, and we're going to pair when he sees the car, and those few that we just saw, you can see that he looks at the car, he stalks the car a little bit, and then he goes after the car. So as soon as he looks and sees the car, I'm going to start to feed him liverwurst. And the liverwurst is only going to be present when the car is present. What should happen in a very short time period is Jack will start anticipating the liverwurst and should start to look back at me instead of looking at the car. So since we're standing out here and I can't predict when cars are going to come, I'm just going to do it as I'm talking. So he looked at the car, the liverwurst came out. Okay. The tough part about classical conditioning is people feel like they're reinforcing the bad behavior. You're not. Classical conditioning is Pavlov's science. He won a Nobel Prize for it. It's very well established in the animal world, and people are classically conditioned as well. If you think about some incident that happened to you, you'll remember smells, sights, and sounds can elicit classical conditioning response to us. When I smell cookies, I think of my grandmother's house. That immediately transforms me back to that. That is an emotional response to the odor of chocolate chip cookies cooking. There are plenty of other ones as well. So here comes another car. Now, as you can tell, Jack's already not as interested in the cars because the liverwurst is around. You have to wait, honey. I also have roast beef, but I find that the liverwurst in the tube is much easier for me to squeeze out. And because he's in such a heightened state, there's another car coming. So he took one look at the car. I do not wait to have this response happen. I don't have to have him in full lunging mode. He just needs to see the car, and then the liverwurst just comes out. What I was going to say, and I'm not sure if you could see that, is he's very worked up around cars, and he really grabs at the treat. So it's very difficult for me to try to hand him one or two pieces of roast beef because he's not as gentle as even he was there. He's really pulling at this tube. So that it's just safer to do that. When you're working classical conditioning, you have to be generous with your food. You cannot offer him, oh, look, there's a car coming here, have one piece of roast beef. That is not going to change his emotional response. He may be happy to eat it, but you're not going to get the effect that you want, which is him saying, oh, car, $5,000, thank you very much. That's what you want him to say. So the biggest problem that people have is they're not generous enough, they don't give enough of the food, and they don't use a high enough value food. Milk bone dog biscuits, crunchy treats are not going to work here. When I'm doing classical conditioning, it's the only time that you may have a residual effect of some diarrhea. Diarrhea is minor compared to Jack being killed because he's chasing cars. Classical conditioning is usually used for any kind of emotional response, and sometimes those emotional responses are pretty serious. So he sees the car and he gets the liverwurst. Gentle. The whole time it goes by, and then we stop. So what's key is the dog has got to see the car first. It does no good if you see the car and preempt his reaction by shoving the liverwurst in his face. What you're going to be classically conditioning is liverwurst predicts the car. Okay, that's a really important difference to understand. It's the car that needs to predict the liverwurst, not the reverse. And Jack really, really likes liverwurst, so he's already more focused on me. Plus, he has a relationship with me. We've done a lot of training together. Check it out. So you can already see he's taking little glances, but he's not nearly as focused. He's not nearly as intense, and he's almost conflicted. Look a little, he's looking at the car, back to me, at the car, back to me. That's exactly the right, that's that's what you expect to see is, oh, the liverwurst is going to trump car chasing. Okay, so, and Jack does have behaviors, right? We've done all those other shows with him. He has sit and down and these things. So now he's beginning to offer me behaviors, which is why it's so important that your dog be taught behaviors before you start to do this. Oh, I was looking at the... Good boy. Now, even if he were lunging, we'll see what happens with this truck. I'm just going to switch hands. Trucks would normally have completely set him off. So when I'm doing this, I would be out for a walk, walking down the street. Come on. Yes. Good boy. Good boy. The next step is, as you're doing this, this should not take very long. If you are being generous and you are indeed using a high value food item, And it doesn't have to be food. If playing tug is the most important thing to your dog, then you could walk with a tug toy. When he sees the car, you engage him in tug. And when the car is gone, you disengage, the tug toy goes away. It's easier with food, as long as the dog is food motivated. So the next thing is, what we should be looking at, come here, Jack, is I want to watch his response to this car coming by. Yes, good boy. Now he looked and he looked back to me, expecting the liverwurst. There it is again, not paying any attention. Now I can start to ask him for an operant behavior, which would be to look at me. So I'm going to back up down the road. Come on, Jack. So we'll watch as the car comes by, and if he looks at me, he gets something. Now you can see he's still conflicted. His head is going back and forth, back and forth. So I'm going to go back to classical another time. Jack. Okay, so that time he didn't look at the car, probably because I had the tube of liverwurst out. So I can click for him sitting, and for sitting, good boy. Let's come back. Good boy. Sit. Good boy. Lie. Lie. Good. Oh, lie. Good boy. So wait until this car goes by. Let's see what we've got with him. Oh, turning. Good boy. So he looks. Good boy. Jack, touch. Good boy. Jack, touch. Yes, good boy. Touch. Touch. Jack, touch. Yes, good boy. All right. So we'll see what Jack does. I'm going to have him work on my left side. That's where I usually have him. Sit. So I test. Yes, he can sit. He's operant. He's focused on me. Let's walk. And the car's coming. He sees it. Good boy. He's looking back. Yes, good boy. Still a little conflicted, but his head is still going back and forth. But as you can see, it's much, much better. Much better. Now we can continue to ask him to look at us when the car comes by. Come on, Jack. So this is where, once the classical conditioning has taken effect, and you'll know that because the dog looks at you expecting the $5,000 in the presence of the car, the classical conditioning is working. Now he's mentally with us and we can use some operant behaviors. That's why it's important for your dog to know, sit, sit. Yes, good boy. Good boy. So the click marks the behavior of sit. We could not have gotten him to do that while he was in the throes of chasing, barking, growling, lunging like he was doing. Okay, let's set up one more time. Come on. He sees the car. Good boy. Looks. Yes. Good boy, Jack. Good boy. Now, the family, Jack's family lives out on a farm, and the chances are he's going to be running loose or on a long line. He's not going to be always on a gentle leader, always under control like this. I can't emphasize enough. Your dog has got to know what you want them to do first before you do some of the next steps, which we're going to show you, which are some ways to make the car adversive to him, where he won't want to chase the car. Good boy. He won't want to chase the car because it's scary. So we're going to change a little bit of equipment, put him on a long line so he has a little more freedom. And the car that goes by is going to blow their horn to try to deter him from chasing the car. So I'll be a little bit further away from him. He's going to go by one more time. Good boy. Come over here. Jack, come on. Good boy. Good boy. Good boy. Bye. I just like to test him to make sure that he's being able to function and follow commands. Okay, so what we're going to do now is Duke's going to drive past. I'm going to try not to be a trainer for a moment. And we want to see if Jack is still going to pursue the car. Then Duke is going to blow his horn. And that's hoping, we won't know if it's going to work or not, if it's aversive enough to Jack to deter him. He didn't particularly care that time. You're just all about the food, which is nice, because if you do this right and you do the training and you take your time, you don't have to use aversives. So I'm going to try to just ignore him. What I can't do is the other trucks and cars that are coming by, of course, they're not in this game plan. Good boy. Yes, good boy. That's silly. All right, so what we're going to try to do now, and you know, when you work with animals, you never know exactly what's going to happen, is we've switched Jack to a long line. So we're going to use this road behind me so I can give Jack some distance from me, 10 feet or so, to make him feel like he's loose, but he's not, all right, because I can't risk that. Duke is driving the car, and we've coordinated so that if Jack appears to look like he's going to chase the car, then, good boy, Duke is going to blow the horn. As we hoped, it will be an aversive. If the dog likes or doesn't care about loud noises, it will not be an aversive to him and it won't work. If he doesn't chase the car because he has had a substantial amount of training, he knows the game is on, and he's worked this program with myself and he's worked it with Duke as a way to try to generalize. So we'll see what happens. The hope is if he looks like he's even thinking about chasing the car, Duke is going to blow the horn. Hopefully that's an aversive to the dog, and then I can ask him to leave it or come back to me for some reinforcement. All right, so let's get this party started. Jack, so we need Jack by the road. And he's still looking at me. Good boy. Which I'm going to reinforce. Sit. Good boy. Good boy. So little head flick. Okay, release. Good boy. So, it's not to say that when we get Jack back to his house and his lots of land area in Vermont that my guess is he's going to chase cars out there, and we will need to use this to see if we can get him to stop. Again, his history with me, good boy. His history with me is so strong on the reinforcement side, and of course I'm wearing a bait bag, that it's just not worth his while to chase cars. He was thinking about that one a little bit. So there's two things happening here. Duke's just switched cars. If you're going to do this kind of thing, you need to generalize it to several different cars. 4 to 5 cars would be best, not just one, or the dog will learn, oh, don't chase the white car because it blows its horn at me. So now it's going to be the white car that's going to be the setup car. So I'm going to allow Jack to think about chasing the white car when it goes by. The other cars that are just going by naturally, I'm going to still work operant, which is click and treat, or the classical if I need to, but I don't think I need to. So I'll ask him for behaviors and reinforce that. Good boy. It was not a setup car. Good boy. You are just being a superstar. Yes, you are. All right, so let's just chat about this. It didn't, as I've said before, working with a dog, you never know exactly what's going to happen. But it also, I think, shows that the right kind of training works, right? No matter how fast you drove by or
we definitely
beat the
tried
horn.
to get him to react.
Right, right. He just kept looking back at me or ignoring you in the car going, he didn't know it was you in the car, but he just kept ignoring the car.
Right. But there's plenty of cars that went by that he
Yes.
didn't know. He didn't react.
Right.
Classical conditioning at his best.
Right, right. Then I also asked him to sit, and when he looked at me after the classical conditioning piece, which is what I've said to do, to install that behavior, right? We've changed the emotional response from rawr, 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 rawr. Now he's looking at me or you, because you've worked with him too, expecting that $5,000. Ooh, car, $5,000.
Right.
Now we have that look, that attention command, and so we click and treat that. It's not necessary that everybody at home use a clicker. You can say the word yes. You can just start reinforcing the behavior that you like. But because I'm training him for someone else, and Duke helps me train him, we all use the clicker, and then there's a common language that's being spoken, and the dog's training is much, much faster. Again, what we were hoping to have happen was to start to chase the car with you in it, because you knew what we were doing, so that we could experiment and see if blowing the horn full on the whole duration that he might have been looking or chasing, if that would be enough of aversive to say, wow, I don't like cars so much anymore. It would just been another tool to use to help sort of to help the foundation of not chasing the cars.
Right. Give him a bad experience about it.
Right, but a safe bad experience,
safe bad experience,
not
yes,
you know,
right.
not the ultimate
Nothing
bad.
that's going to harm him or mean to him or
Right,
anything like that.
right. It also shows that, you know, because Jack has worked with both of us. Sit, yes, good boy. You can really see the conflict there. Car people. So Jack also knows when the game is on, and potentially by standing here and talking enough, the game may be off for him enough that he might start chasing again. But
Right.
The behavior isn't completely gone. As you can see, it's going to have some spontaneous recovery. We're still going to work on this, and the ultimate goal is the owner, and we're going to work with the owner so that Jack gets that history with her and will stop chasing cars on her property, which is ultimately the goal.
It's definitely a very strong impulse for him.
Yes, yep. And there's some herding breed or hunting breed. Again, the behavior gets reinforced because he chases the car and the car goes away. It's like dogs that bark at the mailman. Every time the mailman or mail person comes up to the house, puts the mail in, the dog's barking, 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 and the guy goes away. 6 days a week it works for the dog, and people wonder why their dog won't stop barking at the mailman.
Right.
That's one reason why. Okay, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Doggy Dilemmas. I look forward to seeing you next week.
If you have a doggy dilemma, Denise can help. Visit www.denisemazzola.com for more information. Denise Mazzola is a certified professional dog trainer tested through the Association of Pet Dog Trainers. The association requires recertification every 3 years with a minimum of 30 hours of continuing education. She has been training dogs and working with families for over 20 years.
You don't want to miss... Don't go away. You won't want to miss this episode about car chasing and Jack.
Oh.
It was your idea.
It was, but I didn't know how long your thing was going to be.
It's very short.
Can you edit
All right.
that in and just have it chase?
Just wait. Sit.
You want to do it all again?
I'll do it again. Can this car go around us? Oh! I was going to get another one. Blow it if he chases backing up. No, he doesn't care. Now we got it, right? Wait a minute, we get... Can I get in? Maybe just... You want to get in the back? Oh, there you go. Have fun. Just let the dog in the car. I know. Maybe. Are we done?